All right. Anyway, let's call to order the City Council work session for May 3rd, 2020. One note I will say before we go, we do have an agenda in Spanish on our website, on the city's website. So if you would like to follow along that way, it's another way to do so. All right, Sue, a roll call, please.
I got to do roll call. Sorry, Doug. Councillor McBride.
Here.
Councillor Cofield.
Here.
Councillor Yarnell Holloman.
Here.
Jules is absent tonight. Mayor Rogers.
Present.
Councillor Bacon.
Here.
Councillor Finley.
Here.
Okay. Mayor, all present with the exception of Martinez Plancarte.
All right, thank you so much. I think let's review the council agenda and meeting and the council business items afterwards, and we don't. So Senator Thatcher and Representative Post don't have to wait on us for any longer. So you all are here for a legislative update. We would love to know what's going on in Salem. So. Oops. Senator Thatcher, did you want to lead off?
Sure. I was going to say, is that our cue to jump in? You're so quick and efficient in your introduction. That works for me. Well, I mean, there's a lot going on in Salem, and just for perspective, I'm on the Senate Judiciary and Ballot Measure 110 Implementation Committee. That one keeps me the busiest. And then the other ones are, say, the Joint Legislative Audits Committee, which doesn't meet that often. And then the Rules Committee, which will be, I imagine, very busy near the end of session with all kinds of controversial things. I know that, there's just a lot to keep track of. The Senate Judiciary, I'll just abbreviate it at that instead of saying the whole stinking name over, is the busiest committee on the Senate side, and it's probably the busiest one on the House side, the Judiciary Committee over there as well, as far as committees, policy committees. And then we even excuse me, we even had a bill today where nobody testified on it, and none of the people on the committee had anything to go off of, and we're asking all these questions and nobody really knew. So that was kind of an interesting situation. Don't see that very often, where nobody comes to testify for their bill or in behalf of it, and there wasn't hardly any written testimony to go off of. But things are moving right along. I would say that there's still a lot of what would you call bipartisanship. And most of the bills that go through with broad bipartisanship, bipartisan votes and all that. But there seems to be a lot more distance between opinions on some of the bills than in past, where there just doesn't seem to be, there are irreconcilable differences on some of these things. However, there's still some good things happening. And I was sad to not see Senate Bill 330 go through for landlords, where they could actually get tax credits to help them recover some of their losses. And 2343 House Bill would give some enterprise zone employment flexibility. That's in House revenue, so it's still alive. And then there's some of the bills that have to do with broadband internet, but then again, I want to throw out there too that the private sector has come up with some pretty slick, lickety-split, fast satellite. That's through Starlink. There's also a bill that's alive still that I would think that the city might want to have. Has to do with the local marijuana tax authority, since a lot of that money is being sucked away by 110, the ballot measure 110. That's still alive. But there's another bill that's highly controversial as far as the cities and counties in my district, and it's House Bill 3115 that will be in before my committee and judiciary tomorrow morning, and it has to do with creating ordinances that address time, manner, and place issues as far as homeless people resting and sleeping and camping. I essentially, it's supposed to be addressing a Ninth Circuit Court decision that says it's unconstitutional under the 8th Amendment unless you have options for people. Well, that's going to be kind of tough. Anyway, that one's got a lot of controversy. There's a lot of things, and I would just be happy to just try to answer questions and address whatever might be of interest to you.
Well, thank you. Questions, folks? I can't see all of you. My internet's a little unstable, so raise hand or just fire away. All right. I'm not hearing anything, so Senator Thatcher, thank you. Thank you so much. Representative Post, what about the House side?
Thank you. I would echo some of the same things the senator said. I think in this Teams, we use Teams at the state. So, I mean, I use Zoom for a lot of other meetings, but we use Teams, Microsoft Teams, because that's what the state has contracted with. And it's been fascinating to try to do committees via Teams. So if you can imagine the way you're doing Zoom. I serve on Ag and Natural Resources, Business and Labor, and the Joint Committee on Legislative, it's such a long title, I always forget it. Joint Legislative Committee on Information Management Technology. There we go. And it only meets once a week. You may have seen in the news probably some of the controversy that happened in the Ag and Natural Resources Committee, especially when it comes to do with the Newberg pool, the wakeboarding bills. There were hundreds of people signed up to testify on both sides of the issue, and only about 64 got to testify. And so there were hundreds of people screaming at us. And one of the things that happens with Teams is, so let's say we have a 1 o'clock committee and then there's a 3:15 committee. That 1 o'clock committee, if we were in the building, it would have just gone on for however long it needed to go on. We just stay in the room and we keep going. But because Teams has a time limit on it, at 3 o'clock, the committee just ends. And it literally, the committee person could be talking and it just ends. And so obviously the people who are trying to testify on behalf or in oppose to the bill didn't get a chance to talk. And what's been frustrating is the chairs will say, well, you can submit your written testimony until 24 hours from now, so 3:15 tomorrow. Well, I don't know about you, but if there are 715 letters of testimony, I don't have enough time in the world to read 715 letters in testimony on a bill. I'm there to hear testimony. So that's been very frustrating. And yet we have had over 4,000 bills this session. I really would have liked to have seen a limitation on the amount of bills that we could do. That's been a real nightmare. But on the other hand, April 13th was the first major deadline. So if you're not familiar with how the legislature works, there are major deadlines that are set by the Constitution. The first one is April 13th. If a bill has not been worked, in other words, voted on in a committee, in the House or in the Senate, it's dead. May 14th is the next big deadline. And that's if a bill hasn't moved out of the House or out of the Senate completely, it's dead. Except for bills that have been referred to Rules, Revenue, or Ways and Means. Those are always alive until the very last day of session. So the screaming of dying bills was heard a couple of weeks ago on April 13th when hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bills didn't make it. And part of it was because of the time management, that 2-hour limit to have a hearing. The chairs were just trying to scramble to get bills heard and then worked. And it was really, I felt terrible for the chairs of the committees because they couldn't handle the volume. I think for personally, those of you who've known me for any amount of time know I'm trying like heck once again to get Sudafed behind the counter. And we made our first big move this last week. It passed 54-4 in the House, which is the most it's ever gone by. And it goes on to the Senate. And instead of being sent to Judiciary, where it's died in the past in the Senate, it went to Healthcare, where it belongs. And new Senator Deb Patterson is the chair there, and she is excited about the bill. And we have our first public hearing on Wednesday. So If you didn't know, Sudafed is a prescription, so you have to go to the doctor, then get a prescription, and then you go to pay $29.99 for a package of Sudafed. That's $7.99 across the border in Vancouver. Oregon is the last state, because Mississippi just passed my bill this last March. In Mississippi is now no prescription. So Oregon is the last state that requires a prescription for Sudafed type Sudafedrin products. So that's kind of my personal championing thing. Then outside of that, I was excited to talk with Mike today. I saw Mike, or Dan, excuse me, Dan Weinheimer. Hi, Dan. We absolutely out of nowhere, if you haven't heard about this, so you have the $4.6 billion great big chunk that came from ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act. And that's being, counties, cities are getting their share of that. But there was a deal was made between the House and Senate, or House Republicans and House Democrats to give $2 million to each state rep and $4 million to each state senator to use for their district in whatever, but there's certain parameters. It's got to be infrastructure. It can't be debt. It can't be projects that are just ongoing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you to Dan. I just spent some time on the phone with Dan today on some of Newberg's needs. So we're going to spend that $2 million. We're going to get St. Paul's water system back up and running, which is crazy. We're going to do a work on the library in Kaiser. And then Dan has a couple of things that we're looking at for Newberg. I have $2 million to spend. I've never had this before. Holy cow. So it's been great reaching out to Kaiser, St. Paul, and Newberg and say, what do you need that's under $2 million that I can fund for you? I can get this money. We have to have it in writing by Friday of this week to be submitted to the Legislative Fiscal Office. And then just so you know, what will happen next in the process is it'll become a bill. So all 90 legislators, their asks will be listed on this long bill. The bill will then be passed by the House and the Senate, signed by the governor, and then the funding will come in October. It'll either be in a matter of a check to the city for the project, or it'll be a reimbursement for a project that you want to start, say you want to start it now. So I'm working with Dan on that and looking forward to finalizing that for what Newberg will get out of this. And then, of course, Senator Thatcher has $4 million. So you can hit her up for way more than you can hit me up for. She's on the hook for $4 million. So make sure you hit her hard. But anyway, that's the way it's been going. It's just been very strange. If you haven't seen, when we're on the House floor, and the Senate's a little different because there's 30 members, all 30 of them are on the floor with us because there's 60. The speaker is asking that only about 35 or 40 of us be on the floor. And when I say on the floor, that's not on the floor. That also includes the third floor galleries on both sides and in the back. That's considered the House floor now by rule. So we have about 40 people scattered all around. And then most people go back to their offices. They listen to the bill being talked about. They listen to the speeches. If they want to make a speech, there's a 1-minute clock that goes off. They come down and push their button and say, yes, I want to speak. They speak, and then we vote. Some people just come out and give a thumbs up, thumbs down. Some people stay on the floor. It's really been weird. I don't know how to describe it. Very weird. But I'm told that perhaps by the end of this month, maybe by mid-June, the session should be over June 28th, that we may be back to some sort of an open environment at the Capitol. That's still to be seen. Otherwise, I'm glad to answer your questions.
Thank you, Representative Post. It looks like the mayor is having some internet issues, so I'm going to take over for just a few minutes. Does anybody have any questions for Representative Post? I don't see any going once. Okay, thank you so much for being here, Representative Post and Senator Thatcher. We appreciate having your time. All right, I'm looking at the agenda and I am not fully prepared to go over the committee interviews. So I think we're gonna move on and do the NEOGOV presentation if that's okay. And who is that tonight?
That's Kezia.
Kezia, you're up.
Great. Good evening, members of council and the public. I'm Kezia Warner, Assistant City Manager, and tonight I'm here to share information about NEOGOV, the system that the city now uses to run our recruitment and hiring activities. We also use NEOGOV Elearn to manage employee training and professional development. And over the next few months, we'll be launching the NEOGOV Perform module to manage the city's employee performance evaluation process. This is a straightforward presentation, no infographics, no PowerPoint, just me sharing the information with you. I'm going to touch on a lot of things and I'm leaving time at the end of the presentation for questions. In early 2020, the city adopted the NEOGOV Insight module to run the city's hiring and recruitment processes. The reasons for this were to eliminate the paper-reliant manual hiring process that was inefficient, time-consuming, and overly complicated. NEOGOV has allowed the city to accomplish a large volume of professional recruitments, maintain electronic records of the processes, follows industry standards, communicates through the process with candidates and hiring managers, and shortens the overall time from candidate application to the candidate selection, which is particularly critical in this time of highly competitive recruitments in local government. Speed in the process can mean securing or losing quality candidates. NEOGOV Insight is the software behind governmentjobs.com, and it reaches a nationwide audience. Each step of the application process is trackable and auditable electronically from the initial application review through candidate scoring, reference checks, offers of employment, and hiring of employees. The use of this platform has opened the recruitment door to out-of-state applicants and has significantly increased our responses to job postings. And as I mentioned, since January of 2020, when we launched NEOGOV, the city has posted 26 jobs and received over 400 applications in the system. We have eliminated paper applications. The electronic application format eliminates the barriers as it walks the applicant through the process and streamlines steps. Again, NEOGOV's national reach enables us to increase our potential candidate pool. Improvements that have been made internally since the adoption of NEOGOV Insight include the following. HR has systematically reviewed job postings and interview questions, screening for unintended barriers and ensuring job relevance. All city hiring managers are using scored ratings to evaluate job applications as well as the candidates' responses to the interview questions. The city has diversified its interview panels with cross-departmental teams and bringing in external subject matters from the community to participate on interview panels. The city is also able to create reporting statistics on hiring timelines, candidate demographics, and other recruitment practices. The system prompts communication and action items, alerting HR staff and the hiring managers to communicate or take action to move the process along, and it maintains forward momentum. So HR posts all jobs to the League of Oregon Cities website and often to WorkSource Oregon, as well as targeted field-specific sites such as Oregon Government Finance Officers Association and American Water Works Association. HR also does recruitment outreach through sites that reach underrepresented groups and field-specific applicants. Some examples that we have reached out to and we've utilized are the National Association of Black Law Enforcement Officers, National Latino Officers Association, Jobs for Women, and MinorityJobs.net. Because we're dedicated to maintain the integrity in our hiring process, it's really easy for us to do that using NEOGOV because of the scripted processes and the system standards-driven configuration. Some of the ways we are ensuring accountability and integrity in the process include the system enables us to audit any and all steps of the process. The applications are scored using weighted rating matrices in which hiring managers are able to apply scoring based on the specific job requirements and candidate qualifications. In NEOGOV, each person on the interview panel submits scoring independently into the system and cannot see other panel members' ratings. And this removes some risk of inherent bias or subjectivity. All interview questions are reviewed in advance by HR, are scored, and have established criteria to guide panelists on candidate scoring. All interview panels contain panelists from other city departments or from the community. And the final hiring decision is made by the hiring manager and then forwarded on to the city manager. Another module that we have launched in NEOGOV is the Elearn Module. And it's an online learning and professional development portal used by all city staff. The city's in the process of uploading required proofs of certifications, such as CPR, FEMA, and certificates for specialized work, such as the CDL motor vehicle licenses. This will be ongoing and provide easy access for auditing, reporting, and regular employee reminders regarding deadlines and actions needed for recertifications. Some of the highlights of Elearn include the city has 530 courses loaded at this time. All courses are available in Spanish and English. All city departments are now using Elearn. The city has the ability to tailor make courses for our employees, and this is how we were able to roll out the required OSHA COVID training. Elearn has been essential during COVID to keep up employees' required professional certifications and learning hours because it allows for people to do this remotely. It's easy for us to track participation in courses, which is important particularly for the mandatory courses such as the OSHA compliance course. NEOGOV serves as our system of record for verification of employee certifications and licenses. The last module that I would like to mention, in addition to our eLearn and our Insight, is the Perform module. And the Perform module is scheduled to be implemented in July. It allows for us to conduct our employee performance evaluations electronically. And like Insight and eLearn modules, we expect to experience significant efficiencies by not having to manage paper processes and thereby eliminating high-touch process and manual tracking. Additionally, we expect the performance evaluations themselves to be more meaningful as we move into competency-based evaluations, which will focus on the key competencies for each unique position. It is an opportunity for our managers to tailor the evaluation process to their individual positions that they manage, which should produce more relevant input and feedback for the employees. Some of the important things to know about Perform are that as we continue to operate in a remote work environment, managing performance evaluations electronically is pretty critical. The city's establishing an agreed upon set of enterprise-wide competencies. The process will include both manager evaluations and self-evaluation components. Supervisors have designated job-specific competencies to reflect the unique characteristics of the jobs that our employees perform. Goals loaded into the system in 1 year will automatically populate the following year's evaluation. And the module allows for performance tracking throughout the year in that both the employee and the supervisor can enter comments into the Perform system at any time to keep track of jobs well done during the year or areas of improvement. These will serve as reminders for upcoming performance evaluations. So in summary, the NEOGOV suite of modules enables us to be both more efficient and effective in the services that we provide our employees. It ensures our processes are professional and with the appropriate controls, and it helps increase the caliber of our city employees. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Allison Seiler, who's also on this meeting and on our HR team. She's our expert in all things NEOGOV. She's been the driving force behind implementation, and we wouldn't have made anywhere near the progress that we have without her planning and diligence. So I just want to say a big thanks to her. And with that, I appreciate your time and welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Kezia, and thank you so much, Allison. Does anyone have any questions for Kezia?
Kezia, this is Bryce Cofield.
Hi, Bryce.
Hi. I was wondering if you could maybe speak to your personal experiences going through it, because it seems as though this would have been put in place prior to your hiring. So I would love to hear from your personal experience having gone through it. what you appreciated, what you learned. I think personal anecdotes are more powerful than anything else.
Well, I will tell you that I've used NEOGOV in former places of employment. And so I am familiar with it from my predecessor employment. And it's something that is fairly intuitive. I've not seen it built out to the point where we are here in Newberg. So I think that we're doing a great job sort of integrating all of these modules because they really do work seamlessly together. I've also worked in other systems that really don't speak well to each other, and so that makes it very difficult. But the thing I would mention related to hiring and recruitment specifically is just doing sort of a swag on the amount of time that it takes to run a recruitment in NEOGOV versus doing it manually. We probably shave off about 50% of the time in doing the recruitments. Meaning that we're able to push them out faster, meaning that we're able to reach more candidates, be more responsive, and secure the candidates that we want, move forward on those faster. So it's really helpful to have a scripted system like this. I appreciate Councilor Schofield's question. Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you.
Thank you. And Mike, do you have a question?
Yeah, is this a program that the city owns, or are we on a lease program, or are we with a group of maybe cities that are kind of using this program?
What we are, what I'll equate to a license type of program. So it's a subscription model. We have a contract and we're able to, based upon our needs, they've priced out the contract for our number of employees. And it is common, this is the common structure that they afford their clients. So we don't own it, we use the system, and then they can make certain configuration changes for us if we need it, but it usually comes at a cost. And so we are happy with the product that's off the shelf though.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we will move on. Thank you, Kezia. So I think we are going to go back to agenda item 4A. I was reminded that we need to talk about, if you'll remember, we had a subcommittee to work on committees. And it's coming back to you as the full council to talk about your pleasure in how to do committee interviews when we have applicants for each of our committees. And the options are that we could make a committee that does that, a subgroup that does that, or we could do those as a whole in council. So that's up for discussion now about how you guys as a group want to proceed with sitting people on those committees.
You could also use different individuals for different committees. And so essentially like divide and conquer a little bit so that not one committee doing all the interviews, but each counselor having a role with certain boards and commissions.
I like that idea. Whatever committee that we're on, that's our committee.
Yeah, Mike, do you want to weigh in?
So how has it worked in the past? Do you just pick one or two counselors to be on different committees, or did you all talk about it as a group?
So we're talking about when we seat community members on the committees, and in the past, the mayor has the ability to do that. We have found that more recently we've had a lot more applicants for those committees. Oftentimes, we kind of have to drum up that business to find someone, and so there's really only maybe one applicant or one or two, but we've found recently that we have a lot more in terms of applicants for those committees. And we also have kind of hopefully streamline the process so that we're doing a recruitment once a year and then seating those committee members all at the same time so they don't come up at different times throughout the year, to sort of make it a streamline. So usually, and what it's been historically, is that the mayor has done that work And so we're just trying to get a feel for how that can look a little bit different now.
I think the streamlining is a work in progress. I'll just say that. I'm not sure that we're doing
Yeah.
one recruitment yet.
Yeah. Anybody else want to weigh in? Yes, Sue.
So the push is out, right? We're trying to get kids signed up, students,
Youth.
Look at the color of my hair. Everybody over 35 looks, young to me. So we have 6 students as of today who have applied. So we've been telling the kids that they're going to come before the council June 18th. And so we need to know what to tell them, if we're going to do that for June 19th with all of you and all the kids, or if we're going to do it in July. So students can be fickle, and we want to make sure that 1, we give them the right information, and 2, we don't wait too long because we don't want to lose them. To date, I've had 1 adult apply. So I looked at the committee notes earlier today, and you had discussed having the students come and then the Adults for Citizens rate review, when we were going to go ahead and fill the adult historic preservation just as regular, Rick looking at the applications. So that's mainly the question for staff is we've got recruitment open now. It's open until June 1st. Like right now, Doug, you're way popular. I got 5 kids for planning. And then I got 1 for affordable housing and none for the others. So, it's kind of a juggling situation. So that's just what staff needs to know is what to tell them, because we need to prep them. They may not all be used to interviewing, in a public setting. And so we need to coach them a little bit for that. So just let us know which way you want to go. And if it's July, then we'll talk offline about dates and such.
So I will just say for my preference is that for students that we do it with the entire council. I like that just because I think all of us like to see our students involved, and it might help for them to see all of our faces in case they need to come back in front of us. So that's just my preference, that we would be doing students as a council as a whole, and then we can decide on adults. Anyone else? Mayor Rogers, I know you're on the phone. Do you want to weigh in? Elise.
What did you mean that we can decide on adults? Do you mean like in a different setting? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I kind of mean like what you said is that we could decide to do smaller groups for the adults, but that the students that come would be in front of the full council.
Yeah, I like that. Mm-hmm.
Bryce?
Yep, I'm on board. And I think the previous suggestion, I think that Dan had made and Elise had seconded around it being committee specific to doing those interviews makes sense to me, given what I assume are going to be folks in the committees who know what the needs are better than we probably do. So I think empowering committees to do that work makes sense to me.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sue, is that enough for you tonight, or do you need us to?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, awesome.
No, we're good.
Okay,
Good.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on then to agenda item 5C, the work session on the Stormwater Master Plan update. And Doug, I believe that's you.
So that was a little bit of my engineering the schedule, assuming that we were a little tight and we weren't necessarily quite as sure that we had time for our legislative visit. So pushed that one. And so we've got some consultants that are going to join us. So push that one into the presentations for the business session, if that's all right. Apologize for not being on early, but I am having internet connectivity as well. Sue, you got...
We can do the proclamations now. They don't really
There you
formally require a vote. So
Okay,
Shannon's here and Doug is there. And so if Rick's not available, I can read them unless you want to. Stephanie.
So I would love that if you would do that.
I am not playing the mayor. I will just say Rick Rogers when it gets to that point.
Thank
Okay,
you.
hang on a sec. Just going through. Ask the city recorder. She always knows how to save time. Okay, so this is Shannon. And Shannon, did you want to say anything about Economic Development Week before I read it? No. Okay, yes.
I had prepared remarks for after the proclamation being said, but I would just like to thank actually the City Council for recognizing Economic Development Week. Economic development work includes efforts for livability, for housing, for infrastructure. Of course, it certainly includes initiatives for small, medium, and large business support. So if you really look at this initiative, we're recognizing every department within the city of Newburgh and how they contribute to the overall health and growth of our community. So thank you.
So proclamation for Economic Development Week. Whereas economic developers promote economic well-being and quality of life for their communities by creating, retaining, and expanding jobs that facilitate growth, enhance wealth, and provide a stable tax base. And whereas economic developers stimulate and incubate entrepreneurism in order to help establish the next generation of new businesses, which is the hallmark of the American economy. And whereas economic developers are engaged in a wide variety of settings, including rural and urban, local, state, provincial, and federal governments, public-private partnerships, chambers of commerce, universities, and a variety of other institutions. And whereas economic developers attract and retain high-quality jobs, develop vibrant communities, and improve the quality of life in their regions. And whereas economic developers work in the city of Newburgh within the state of Oregon. Now, therefore, it is proclaimed by the mayor and city council and on behalf of the people of the city of Newburgh, Oregon, that we proclaim and recognize May 9th through 15th, 2021 as National Economic Development Week and remind individuals of the importance of this community celebration, which supports expanding career opportunities and improving quality of life. Be it further resolved that the City Council of Newburgh is authorized and directed to transmit an appropriate copy of this resolution to our partnering economic development organizations. So Doug, did you want to say some remarks about historic preservation, or do you want me to read the proclamation first?
Thanks, Sue. No, this is our annual Historic Preservation Month. So we've been doing this for a number of years as a way to acknowledge the historic resources that we have in town. Unfortunately, the National Trust for Historic Preservation did not get the theme out to everybody until Friday. So we had already written ours and I didn't want to change it. So with that, I will turn it back over to Sue.
So I will read this proclamation coming to you from historic City Hall, built over 100 years ago. So throw that in there for City Hall. Whereas the National Trust for Historic Preservation established May as Historic Preservation Month in 1973 as a way to promote historic places for the purpose of instilling national and community pride, promoting heritage tourism, and showing the social and economic benefits of historic preservation. And whereas the City of Newburgh recognizes May as Historic Preservation Month and supports events in the community to instill awareness and promote the historic assets in Newburgh. And whereas Historic Preservation Month can instill awareness of the local historically significant buildings and landmarks to the residents of Newburgh and surrounding communities. And whereas Historic Preservation Month can promote Newburgh's locally designated historic landmarks and landmarks listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And whereas historic preservation can be a community discussion uniting residents behind an important cause. And whereas historic preservation has been shown as a great way to create jobs, stabilize property values, and preserve existing housing stock. Now, therefore, it is proclaimed by the mayor and city council and on behalf of the people of the city of Newburgh, Oregon, that we proclaim May 2021 as National Historic Preservation Month in Newburgh.
Thank you very much, Sue, and thank you, Shannon and Doug. Dan, how about if we do your city manager report now and get that done with in this hour?
Sounds good. Yeah, I don't have a huge one, so I easily fit it in. Just wanted to note for those of you who are joining and kind of looking on our website for agendas and kind of tracking the city council, we've got a new feature. First time we have our city council agenda translated into Spanish. And so there are a couple ways to access that. But if you access our city webpage and pull up the agendas, there's a tab or a link on the English version as well. So I want to thank the employees who helped us get that translated, and something we're going to continue to do based on some feedback that we received from the Equity Task Force, which is, helps to at least know what's going on at the city council meetings in order to be able to participate in the future. So hopefully we'll be able to extend that out to other Spanish language services as well. And I've got some information from the folks that provide the service for the school district, which is an concurrent or simultaneous translation service, and looking to kind of work through that contractual arrangement as well. So all things COVID, all things all the time, COVID, at least maybe a little bit less than it is for Councillor Uriel Holloman, but almost as much. We're working on sort of the yo-yo of going up and down with the restrictions of the county risk level. So Yamhill County, as you know, is back at high risk. And so that is a 25% capacity in our buildings, and what we're trying to do is to stabilize our services to make sure that we're not opening and closing things often. And so I think trying to let it ride, as it were, and keep things open and make sure we're providing the services to the extent that we can. The library is actually going to be hosting, and it's on our website for those who are interested in signing up, but hosting a COVID vaccination clinic with Providence and Yamhill County Public Health. And that will be Wednesday this week from 1 to 6 p.m. And that's the first dose of Moderna vaccine. And I believe a month later, you get your second dose. And so just try to make sure that we let folks know and try to be a resource for community members that are interested. And that is open to 18 years old individuals and older. I'm not sure, Sue, if those are adults or kids, but I'll go with adults at 18 years old. But in any event, trying to make sure we, again, help folks get vaccinated. Other work, as the council well knows, we're on budget committee. This month is a meeting intensive month. And so, or I should say last month, since it's now May, but April bleeding into May is a busy month for our councilors. And tomorrow is what I'm hoping is our last budget committee meeting as we go into deliberations and trying to sort of wrap up the budget committee's work. We planned June 7th as the date for consideration of the budget by the city council. So barring any catastrophes or emergencies or any other things there, hopefully we'll stay on schedule with those items. And we have posted budget related information on our website. We'll continue to post updated copies of the budget and those kinds of things. And so making sure that folks are able to access that information, and there's still opportunity for public comment and all kinds of things related to the budget. And other things that I was able to do the last couple of weeks, just a few highlights. One, attended a presentation by a class at George Fox. One of the opportunities that we've had where professors are interested in doing projects related to the city and kind of using us for what I would call pracademic work. And so we were a client for a public relations campaign class. And so they looked to do a Summer of Sustainability was their campaign. And so they basically put together a PR campaign for the city that we are planning to use, as far as I know, this summer in marketing for sustainable behaviors, activities, and service offerings through the city. And so, kind of using the brain power of the students and getting them involved and understanding some of the work that we do in our departments. So it's neat to kind of watch them present on that, answer any questions that they might have had, and kind of speak to them about, the sort of questions that I would have as a client. So hopefully we'll continue to do that, and maybe more with Fox. It was a great opportunity. Had a couple related meetings to our theme of Economic Development Week, and one being a meeting with Sean at the Cultural Center, talking about partnership opportunities, actually more around DEI work, and trying to support them with some of the efforts that they've got going on as far as the data collection the city might be able to work with them on. But we talked a lot about how the Cultural Center is an economic development asset for the community, and how we can help work collaboratively to enhance the work at the Cultural Center and the city in partnership. So it was a good meeting, and hopefully we'll be able to help with the data collection as well. And then lastly, had a meeting with Polly Peterson at the NDC and with Josh Duder from the chamber, and we talked about the prospect of launching a Berg Bucks, kind of a closed loop gift card for businesses in the city, something that folks could essentially buy or pre-buy, I suppose, as you do with gift cards, buy some money and use that money or gift that money within town, and have that come back to local businesses in a closed loop system. And so hopeful to get that launched, and definitely looking to partner with them on that. But kind of just an exciting thing that we didn't start. They brought to us, and we're looking for partnership. And so, cool idea that I've seen work really well in other communities, and excited to have something like that here. And that is my report for now.
All right, sorry, folks. I think I'm back on at the moment, and hopefully it'll be for more than a moment. But anyway, Council President Finley, thank you so much. Thank you all for your patience. We have something called a mobile hotspot that just got plugged in, so let's fingers crossed that that's going to work. So we'll see. All right, all right. So we moved 5C to the business session, so we'll come back and hear on that for the Stormwater Master Plan update. We'll see that during the business session. Anything on the council agenda and meeting, folks? A couple things are we've switched things around a little bit. I think consent calendar comes a little bit later. We've got a couple people that do want to give public comment, so we will go from there. Other than that, we've got child sighting. We got children sighting. There we go. All right. Anything else before we wrap the work session up, and we'll come back for the business session promptly at 7 o'clock? Anything else? Oh, I do have one other thing. My apologies, my sincerest apologies for not getting out the material for Dan's evaluation prior to today. It was supposed to go out Friday morning, and technological potholes or something. But anyway, so you should have it by now, and that will be at the end of the business session this evening. Okay. Yep. Elise.
I just wanted, and I think a couple people have talked about this a little bit, but I wanted to just kind of say it publicly, is that with the budget committee, I mean, I feel like it's been going really great, but I do have some guilt of some questions that I've been asking, just around not necessarily probably the right space to be asking these big questions that are more, policy questions, I guess. And I know that has been a topic, but I do just want that to be a point of discussion at some point with the group. I don't think it's fair to staff for us to be asking those questions in that setting, and I've done a lot of reflection myself, and there's a couple things that I would really like to bring to the floor at some point, but it's just kind of hard to know when the right space is to do that, to be respectful of staff time, and also knowing that some of the questions I want to bring up are big questions that require a lot of conversation.
Yeah. And that's actually, I know Councilor Finley mentioned the same thing after the budget, the last budget session. And I know, Dan, we've spoken a little bit about sort of trying to do a retreat type function, that maybe that would be a good time for that kind of discussion.
That would be ideal, yeah. And I'm about halfway through writing an RFP for one, essentially trying to get a consultant lined up for us, maybe a relationship rather than a one-off, so that we can have somebody who can guide us through, building and then, some of the implementation on some of the policy work, the strategic policy work. But yeah, I've got some of that started, and I think that would be a good first step.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, Elise, thank you for bringing that up. I think that's great, and get that going. I think that would be very good for everybody, actually. So, all right. Anything else? All right. Let's see y'all back here in 9 minutes. Then it's 7 o'clock, and if you don't see me, the hotspot didn't work. So there you go. All right. See you in a bit. So here we go. All right. So this is the City Council business session for May 3rd, 2021. And we're broadcasting live from our various offices and offices home and away. And here we are. We're having some technological difficulties this evening, folks. So anybody who's tuning in, our apologies. We'll try to muddle through. If we could call this meeting to order, and there is an agenda in Spanish as well that you can find on our website. And as Dan mentioned during the work session, this is the start of what we hope will be an expanded Spanish language offering on these meetings. So anyway, also now a roll call, please, Sue, if you will.
Councillor McBride.
Here.
Councillor Cofield.
Here.
Councillor Yarnell Holloman.
Here.
Mayor Rogers.
Here.
Councillor Bacon.
Here.
Councillor Finley.
Here.
And Mr. Mayor, Councillor Martinez Plancarte is absent this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. The Pledge of Allegiance, please. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, folks. A little bit of a change from the work session. We're going to go into presentations on the Stormwater Master Plan here first, and then we'll resume the agenda from there, back with council appointments, item 6. So if we could, the Stormwater Master Plan update, please.
Hello, this is Natalie Jennings from HBH Engineers. Can you make me a presenter so I can share the PowerPoint, or can someone share it for me, please?
You should be a presenter, Natalie. Go ahead and try.
It says host has disabled screen sharing.
Okay, I'll fix it. Hang on just a second. Okay, give it a whirl now.
All right, let's try this. All right, perfect. It looks like it's gonna work. It's full screen. It's not letting me do that. Sorry for technical issues. Is it? Apparently the screen is frozen. I'm gonna try again. It's not letting me do anything.
Okay, let me give a try for my end.
Oh, there we go. Oh, something happened.
There we go. Okay, good deal.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Oh, it's just lagging, I guess. So sorry if it's slow. Let me know if I'm too far off. So, all right. So in case you're not familiar with what a Stormwater Master Plan is, it's a conglomeration of a lot of data, and it forms recommendations. So just real quick, hopefully you've got a chance to thumb through it at least a little bit. These are kind of every chapter. There's a description of physical characteristics at the beginning, and then we evaluate the existing system for capacity issues in the stormwater system, as well as maintenance issues that have been reported to us. Then we put it in a computer model and create a hydraulic model of the system. It had already been created in this case, and we updated it. And then another thing we do is we review staffing levels and design standards. And and then we recommend improvements and eventually create a capital improvement plan. This all goes into the master plan document. So why are we updating the Stormwater Master Plan? It's something that the city chooses to do every 5 years per the code. And there's been a significant amount of development since it was last done in 2014. There's also been a change in design standards between the 10-year storm event and the 25-year storm event. So real quick, the 10-year storm event means that it's an event that will happen about every 10 years statistically over history. And the 25-year event is an event that will happen about every 25 years. So the 25-year event is much worse than the 10-year event, even though that sounds kind of counterintuitive. Okay. We also incorporated some of the recommendations from the Riverfront Master Plan into this plan. This is a flow chart that sort of goes through the city stormwater process. This came about through the CAC meetings we had earlier, and we just wanted to make sure everyone knows how this all works. So as you can see, there's arrows flowing both directions in and out of the Stormwater Master Plan. It kind of relates on this community feedback. So the Stormwater Master Plan provides an evaluation, and then we recommend problems. We recommend solutions to the problems that we find in the evaluation to create a capital improvement plan, which is part of the Stormwater Master Plan. That's different, however, from the city's capital improvement program. So this Stormwater Master Plan document just provides guidance for the city staff and council to make budgets and that sort of thing to see what can actually be done every 5 years. And that's kind of how those two things are related. From that capital improvement plan, the actual construction projects are, sorry, I have to sneeze. Anyway, the actual construction projects are selected. And so what we recommend in the plan is usually the least cost option. They're a low level of design when the consultant is selected for the final design of each of these projects. They will go into all of the options of, well, is it better if we detain water on site? Or there's a million other options of ways you can do this. We just opted for the cheapest, easiest, quick design solution for the overall plan to say, hey, this solution will fix your problem. When you get into fancier later on design iterations, there may be other solutions. I mean, I know there are other solutions. We just have to pick one for the master plan. So that's where we're at with that. It goes into design and then finally construction. Now this public works design and construction standards and city code updates come from community feedback. And also this is back and forth there from the Stormwater Master Plan because it all relates back and forth. Okay. So real quick, these are the problem areas in town. If you want to look in more detail to specific things, I'd recommend looking through the report because it explains it a lot more detail. One of the major problem areas. So on this, red is the worst, orange is medium, and yellow is not as bad, but they're all still problem areas. So one of the worst areas is down in this area, and then up in this area, and in Springbrook. This area is kind of interesting because it's only a few short pipes that fix the entire area. So that one will be a cool project to look into. We also looked at maintenance issues that were reported by maintenance and the CCTV that has been performed. Okay. So there's items on here like spot repairs, or you need a new pipe, or you need to replace the pipe based on what they've seen, based on how bad it is. That's all in there. There's areas where it was flooding or surcharging. Maintenance issues, this is just a summary of what we've found. 17 confirmed flooding areas. there are probably a lot more areas in town that have flooded. It's just these are the documented ones by either a customer complaint or the staff. There's 41 catch basins, manholes, pipes, or outfalls that need replacement. 1 sinkhole that needs addressing. 8 locations need maintenance that are not a CIP related issue. So that could be they're frequently needing cleaned out due to leaves or things like that. And 18 spot repairs, which means you don't have to replace the whole pipe or manhole, you just have to replace a section of it. There's a few non-capacity related issues that we highlighted in the report. Pipes older than 50 years are reaching the end of their useful life if they haven't already. So those need to be slated for replacement eventually. They're a lower priority than some of the capacity issues because those are a right now problem. We'll get into prioritization later, but same thing with the pipe material degrading for cast iron, clay in particular, steel and corrugated metal pipe. Those are all not as good as HDPE and some other materials out there. There's the CCTV, if you're not familiar with it, it produces a PACP score of 1 to 5, and 5 is failed or will fail within 5 years. So we've highlighted those areas that need to be replaced or rehabbed on the map. And then the Willamette total maximum daily load is currently required. That's it's a permitting issue that deals with water quality that's being discharged from all waters entering the Willamette River, including the stuff from Newberg. And Newberg is being very proactive and trying to be ahead of the curve of a future permit for the NPDES MS4 permit. Right now it's on a shared permit, and in the future it will probably have its own. So city staff and have been really on it with making sure that they're meeting the potential future requirements with that. So water quality issues will be a thing in the future. I'm not going to go through every prioritization criteria on here. You can read through this as you want, but I'll just summarize quickly. Essentially, projects that serve a large area and they're less expensive than others are often prioritized. If they fix an area that floods frequently, they're prioritized. They benefit the largest number of users, or if they're coinciding with a project that's already going to exist. Say you're like, for instance, the River Street project, that's already set to be a road improvement. So it's much cheaper to do it now than it would be to do it after the road is already in. You can go into details of that in the question section. Identified projects. So these are color coded on here. The green is the traditional CIP projects. They're what we got from the hydraulic modeling. The yellow is those were found in the CCTV. What's important to know about the yellow is you'll want to look at those actual CCTV sheets, because the entire pipe is not necessarily a 5, but there was a 5 somewhere in the pipe. So some of those are spot repairs. It may not be as bad as it seems, but it's something to notice. The maroonish purple, the stream channel improvements, were recommended in the last master plan. We did not update that, so they just got left in there. The purple are maintenance noted that need replacement. The blue are from the Riverfront Master Plan. Orange are pipe material issues. There's only a few of those. And red are pipes that are over 50 years old. So key points from that. There's a lot of figures and tables listed on there. that go into a lot of detail about every specific one, what it is. I think I didn't put the appendix on there. So I believe it's Appendix B that has all of the, no, maybe not. One of the appendices has a bunch of sheets on it that go into all of the capacity capital improvements and what they are, why they're needed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully that's helpful in understanding what those are. So we have the prioritized projects here based on the criteria we talked about earlier. So priority 1 is 0 to 5 years. So essentially between now and the next master plan, it would be ideal to have these done. Priority 2 is 6 to 10 years. So will be reevaluated when the next master plan is being completed. And priority 3 are the lower priorities somewhere in the future. And that's where we're at. And these correspond to all those tables and figures, so you can cross-reference what those are. This is a lot of data. I'm not going to read it all to you. So we had a big portion of what we talked about with the CAC, and their concerns were about design criteria. So we had them provide a lot of recommendations about what they think should be in the design criteria. And it's my understanding that the council is the one that needs to decide whether or not the design criteria is revisited or not. And city staff, please correct me if I'm wrong. I think that was about how that works. And so some of the CAC recommended activities were they want to consider pervious surfaces and retention of stormwater, and some things about outfalls. They also want to ground truth the model and data collection. So that's one thing that I didn't point out earlier. Due to when this master plan happened, it didn't coincide with the time of year when you can do flow monitoring. And so it would be really good if the next time around it can coincide with flow monitoring so that the model can be calibrated more than just saying, yes, we know it floods there. But if you are able to do flow monitoring, then you can know, well, is it flooding about as much as it did in reality? That sort of thing. So that's a big one to point out. And then in terms of what HBH and the city staff recommended, a lot of it pertains to strengthening existing wording in there so that it's more clear what's needed for specific things. And then requiring specific attributes for GIS files to make it more clear for consultants who are just doing design projects so that it can be incorporated a lot easier into the city GIS system, and all the information's actually there. And then promote the availability of existing stormwater management fee credits to properties where stormwater management is provided that exceeds minimum stormwater standards. So it's a lot of stuff to unpack there, but hopefully that can be a further discussion topic at some point. Next steps, it's going to the Planning Commission hearing and recommendation, and then we'll come back to you guys for the hearing and approval. And then we'll have the final Stormwater Master Plan document, and you can move forward with design standard changes and any other recommendations council approves or provides direction for. Any comments or questions?
Oh, there you go, Mike.
Yeah, a couple questions. One is, where's the sinkhole located at?
And that might have, it's right here. I don't know if this, oh, oops. Might have to get out of here.
Oh, is that, oh, let's see here.
Can't zoom in enough on that map.
Oh,
to
off
see.
of Sierra Vista.
Yeah, it looks like Sarah and is it Meridian? It's somewhere in there. It's just north of the railroad tracks. But it'll be easier to see on the printed out maps. This one isn't zooming very well. Sorry about
And
that.
the other question I had is, it didn't look like there was that many pipes that are over 50 years old. So it looks like we've made a considerable improvement there, but they must be holding up. Otherwise, we wouldn't be putting them on a more of a priority list. Is that correct?
So part of the problem is that there aren't records for a lot of the pipes. So there's several unknown years. So if you look in the report, there's a figure, and I didn't put it in this presentation, that has what the years are, and I think they're color coded red, yellow, and green of good, okay, and bad. And the most of the system is unknown. So that doesn't necessarily mean that just because we don't have it highlighted on here means that it's good, but at the same point, having a pipe there that's the right size, that's slightly degrading, at least it is stormwater. So if it's leaking out a little, it's still better than nothing. It's not like it's sewer and it's, there's bad things that happen if sewer water lines are like that. But we do like to point it out so you can keep it in mind, because depending on the type of pipe, it can last anywhere between 50 to 100 years usually. So it is something to keep in mind and know that it's coming at some point, so.
Great. Other questions, folks? Okay, I can't see you if you do. All right, Natalie, I just wanted to say on this, thank you. I was pleased to see the CAC and the HBH recommendation and city recommendations. I know Councilor Bacon and I have had numerous conversations with folks in town regarding the treatment of stormwater. So I'm glad to see that that's happening and it's moving forward on this. So thank you. Any other comments or questions, folks? All right, awesome. We will wait to hear more then after the Planning Commission does. All right. Again, Natalie, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Hey.
All right. All right. We had the city manager's report and both the proclamations on Economic Development Week and the proclamation proclaiming May 2021 as National Historic Preservation Month. That occurred during our work session. The city manager's report was also presented during the work session. So we'll move on to council appointments. That starts item 6A on your agenda. You have before you recommendations to appoint to the Newberg Urban Area Management Commission, a commission that's actually been dormant for 12 years, but it looks like we've now got some action heading this way. Full disclosure, I was actually on that during the 12 years it was dormant. It was the best committee I ever served on. So anyway, sorry. So we've got a council representative. I will do it, and Denise has offered to be the alternate. From the Planning Commission, Jeffrey Musall, and the alternate, Chris Wright, and citizen at large, Merrill Kunkel. So if we could get a motion to that effect, that would be great.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the appointments that you just stated.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Stephanie. All right, any further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your left hands. All right, looks good. Perfect. Thank you very much. All right, let's move on now to item 7, public comments. First, let's start with Rachel Thomas, the Willamette Falls and Landings Heritage Area Coalition. We'll grant 5 minutes per speaker this evening. And then Rachel, particularly if you want, if the council is interested, you can maybe come back for a additional time during work session or something like that. But I'm happy to turn it over to Rachel when you are ready.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not seeing Rachel on the attendee side, so I do have some anonymous people like named guest. Okay. So, but Valerie Gray is on the attendee side, and we could go with her first. And Rachel, if you're in the audience on the attendee side, just send me a quick email or chat message in so I know to promote you. Okay, I'm going to bring over Valerie now.
Okay.
And start the timer.
All right. Good evening, Valerie. Hopefully you can hear us. And this is public comments. You have 5 minutes when you are ready. I will warn that we've had technological issues this evening, so hopefully we're not seeing more of that.
I did promote her, but with the timer up, I can't see if she's on the screen.
Okay.
She is, but it's muted. She's muted.
Okay.
Oh, I see. Okay.
There you go.
I'm unmuting and starting the video. Okay, I couldn't see that on my screen before.
Okay.
Okay, great. And you can hear me okay now? Okay.
We can. Good evening.
All right, good evening. As some of you know, and especially Dan Weinheimer, with whom I've been in contact over the past week or so, I've been requesting an enforcement of the fire code for the past couple of years. And I've explained this before at the October meeting last year, that there is a fire pit in my neighborhood. It's located right in the middle of a very densely populated block, College, Columbia, and Maine. And it's located in the largest backyard in the neighborhood too, at the intersection of 2 wooden fences under a grove of trees. And it is in violation because it is not located even 20 feet, even 10 feet from the fences. It's under foliage and shrubbery, and it's required to be attended at all times. Not only is it in violation of, in all those respects, whenever it's lit, but last year, as I explained to the council in October, it was lit 2 nights in a row during a burn ban and a high wind warning. And the Newberg police could not even respond for several hours when I reported it on July 4th because of all the fireworks complaints. So it's really quite nerve-wracking because this pit exists in the middle of the block, as I said, at the end of 2 shared driveways. There are 4 homes that share 1 driveway just behind it, and on the other side, 3 homes with a shared driveway, which would make evacuation very difficult. The neighbor has not responded to the code compliance officer. I went over there to visit him, and at first they agreed not to light it up, but again, it was lit in September. So I'm very concerned about this. The fire marshal has said that there are, and this is puzzling to me, constitutional limits of enforcement powers. He said that he is not legally permitted to enter the premises of a private residence for purposes of inspection. But this pit does not need to be inspected. It's visible from most of the surrounding homes. You can see it through the fence, in fact, and definitely from my upstairs window. So Dan, you encouraged me to reach out to the fire marshal, and he responded that this decision, they do not have authority to enter private residences, which again is not required in this situation. And this code can only be changed by the legislature. He also said he would forward my letter to the deputy, but I didn't get any response. So this is puzzling to me. Dan, you said, I doubt we would have any recourse in this situation, even though an inspection is not required. So I'm wondering, wouldn't it be in the city's interest to advocate that the fire code be enforced by the company with which you contracted to prevent fires? I attended the meeting, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, in which you voted to contract with Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, and yet they have declined to enforce the code. Only the DEQ sent a letter regarding the smoke, but really that's the least of my worries in this regard. It is located in such a dangerous spot. And the neighbor has been unresponsive to any complaints. So I'm wondering what can be done about this, given that an inspection is not needed in order to deal with this situation. Will you, for example, draft a letter to Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue in regard to this matter? Do I need to speak to the city attorney? I would like to know, now that fire season is here and we are already experiencing a burn ban, which my neighbor has violated, what can be done about this situation?
Okay, well, thank you, Ms. Gray. Thank you very much for your comments. I'm sure there will be additional discussion as you request between City Manager Weinheimer and our city attorney, and we can hopefully get back to you with something in the not too distant future. So thank you very much for your time this evening. Okay.
Can I respond to that?
Sure. Normally we don't do a lot of exchange back and forth during public comment, but that's
Right.
fine if you have a comment to make, sure.
I understand. It's just that last October, that was the same response I got, that you could hopefully get back to me after a discussion, but nothing has transpired since, other than that you've contracted with TVF&R. So given that fire season is upon us, what can be done?
We don't contract with TVF&R. They are the taxing agency that handles the fire service. It's not a contract with us.
Oh, okay.
It's like the school district and the government and TVF&R, Park and Rec.
Right, and it's been a couple of years now that this agreement has been in place. So, okay, but I would recommend, we will, I mean, I can't speak for everybody on staff, but I think, we certainly have heard your question, and we'll try to follow up as best, again, as I think Dan has explained with the situation, but again, thank you very much for your time.
But again, if an inspection is not required, what can the city do? It seems to me
Dan,
the city can do something.
Dan, do you want to take that?
I think what we've talked about, it's really a situation where, the question being posed to TVF&R may not be the right one, but in essence, they're being asked to come and inspect, and they're quite clear, and we're clear. That's what their perception is of the question. I mean, we don't need to argue on, the idea of back and forth isn't really necessary right now, but in essence, they are answering the question that they think is in front of them, which is that they don't have a legal authority to go into this person's property. They're not being invited. They're not being asked to inspect. And so they've given you an answer. I think we can try to speak with them and correct that, which may be a misperception as to what the request is. But typically, we do not do over the fence inspection, if you will, or in code compliance. And so we would need to gain access. A code compliance officer or the fire marshal in this case would need to gain access to be able to inspect the fire pit and then speak with the family and that owns it. So I think there's a lot more that needs to be probably pursued with TVF&R to clarify the situation.
All right, and Dan, will we be doing some of that clarification?
Yeah, I think we can reach out to TVF&R. They've been in contact with Ms. Gray, so it's one of those things that she's got an individual who she's gone back and forth with, but I can try and intervene.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right, Ms. Gray. Dan has said he will try to intervene with TVF&R, and hopefully that will resolve the issue. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, moving on. Good evening. I see Rachel Thomas. You're on the line. Good evening, and here to talk about the Willamette Falls and Landings Heritage Area Coalition. For this period of the evening, we'd like to give you 5 minutes, and then possibly, depending on council preference, maybe come back and talk to us a little bit more. But we are ready when you are.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I'm impressed that you got that mouthful out. It's a long name, Willamette Falls and Landings Heritage Area Coalition. So I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of their board. We are gathering letters of support from local organizations and governments to support the creation of a heritage area, national heritage area along the Willamette River. This is a program through National Parks and Rec. These areas are set by the United States Congress. So it's a pretty big deal. The heritage area we are proposing will go from Lake Oswego all the way down to Willamette Mission State Park, just outside of Salem. So it does include the Newberg area. Heritage areas are designed to recognize a section of land or that has specific historical and cultural value to our country. So creating a national heritage area is non-regulatory. It doesn't affect how we use the area along the river. That was my first question. I said, we've got a riverfront plan, we can't do this. It doesn't regulate anything like that. It puts us up there for our grants. It creates tourism opportunities. It helps us promote our river as an important heritage area. So this is what we're working on right now. This board has been working for about 11 years now. I'm new to the board, so you'll have to excuse me. We've been working for about 11 years on this, and it is hopefully going to go through Congress during this legislative session. So we're trying to get letters of support. So what I'm asking for the city is you'd be willing to offer a letter of support for this. We have letters from the Newberg Area Historical Society, which I represent, as well as Hoover Minthorn House, the Chamber of Commerce, and many other Newberg organizations already. And we're excited to see this happen. Some of the plans that the Heritage Area Coalitions are working on are things like reopening the locks at Oregon City so that boats can go up and down the river again. It'll help promote tourism. Lots of other great projects. The Grand Ron is actively involved in this, and we work actively with them. It's been a very positive relationship, and they are on board. So that's been one of my first questions from most organizations. That's my quick spiel. You guys have a very detailed set of information, way too much information to read. If you want a quick overview, the link to the Prezi at the end kind of summarizes it all for you. But it's, I think, a worthy cause, and I would love to see the city of Newberg support it.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And Rachel, in the packet, is there a draft letter of support included?
There is. There's a draft.
Okay. Awesome. Well, great. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Anything else, Council? Okay. Looks good. All right. Let us get back to you on the letter of support then.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, Rachel. Thank you. All right. Let's move on now to the consent calendar. It looks like we've got resolution 2021-3742, an extension of the local emergency until June 28, 2021. Do I have a motion, folks?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Second. Thanks, Mike. And all in favor signify by raising your left hands. All right. Consent calendar passes unanimously. Thank you. If I might, and I don't know if this is going to jam things up too much, are Leslie and Britta on already? I don't know if I see Britta. Okay. Hi, Leslie. Good evening. Are you prepared to go now, or do you want to wait till Britta's on with you, Leslie?
I'm on.
Oh, there's Britta right there. Hey, Britta. All
Hi.
right. Why don't we do that? That way you guys don't have to be here for the whole meeting. So this is resolution 2021-3731, a resolution approving the fiscal year 2021-2022 Visit Newberg, Taste Newberg, business plan and budget.
Leslie, do you need to unmute?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yay. Sorry, I tried phoning in, so different technology than normal for me. Okay. Thank you, Mayor Rogers. For the record, I'm Leslie Caldwell, Executive Director for Taste Newberg. Our Board Vice President, Britta Stewart, is also with us today to be available to answer any questions you might have at the end of the presentation. And I'm pleased to present Taste Newberg's fiscal year 2021-2022 business plan and budget for this presentation. I will touch on high levels of the plan and hopeful that you've had the opportunity to review the plan specifics. Next slide, please. So our board comprises lodging operators, tourism industry partners, and community leaders. I've listed our current board members for your review, and new this year are Phil Amaya, who is co-owner of Windy Roads Cycling Tours, and also the tasting room manager at Eminent Domain Winery. Also new is Ren Nakamasu, and he is the assistant managing director for the Allison Inn and Spa. And lastly, in an ex officio capacity, we have Tana Faxon, who represents the Chehalis Valley Chamber of Commerce as board president. Next slide, please. So the Oregon Tourism Commission defines tourism as economic activity resulting from tourists, and tourists as those folks traveling more than 50 miles or combining an overnight stay with their activity. So in 2019, tourism spending in Yamhill County was more than $121 million, employment more than 1,800 jobs, and $43 million in industry earnings. Lodging tax collected in Newberg was more than $1.1 million. Comparatively, lodging stays in calendar year 2020 decreased dramatically due to COVID, resulting in total TLT revenues of $498,000, reflecting a decrease of 55%. Approximately 65 cents of every lodging tax dollar collected goes to Newberg's general fund for public safety, library, and other services. Next slide, please. So Taste Newberg's mission is to enhance the economic vitality of the community by promoting Newberg as a year-round visitor destination. Its purpose is to build brand awareness, stimulate a year-round tourism economy, attract and educate visitors about Newberg and Yamhill County. We promote overnight lodging stays to Oregon residents, as well as markets beyond Oregon. We support local tourism industry businesses to help drive economic impact. We represent area interests as a conduit between industry partners and Travel Oregon, Willamette Valley Visitors Association, Willamette Valley Wineries Association, Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association, and others. We promote brand values of wine country proximity, walkable historical downtown with tourists facing locally owned businesses, arts, culture, heritage attractions, outdoor recreation, and our wealth of culinary and beverage tasting offerings. Next slide, please. So for our fiscal year in review, our brand deployment was scheduled for March 2020, as you might remember, but was delayed due to COVID restrictions. We did launch our website in March and consequently shifted our brand marketing to focus more towards organic marketing strategies and tactics, measurable by the results shown on this slide. To recap, we generated 7,000 unique visitors to our website. We established and grew our social media to more than 1,700 followers and 20,000 engagements. We delivered 21 e-newsletters to consumers as well as industry partners. We built our image gallery to more than 1,500 photos. We wrote and published 22 blogs and produced 32 videos. We created and activated quarterly integrated media promotions, hopefully you're all familiar with, which include the Lavender Days of Summer, the 12 Shops of Christmas, Newberg Truffle Month, and Spring Art Blooms in Newberg Wine Country. Our campaigns generated 418 hotel room night bookings and $49,000 in lodging revenue. Our public relations efforts resulted in more than 10 broadcast TV segments, 9 hosted media FAMs. FAM stands for Familiarization Tour. Media story coverage that garnered 183 million online readership. And administratively, we completed our first annual audit. We wrote and received 2 COVID relief funding grants and 1 PPP loan. Next slide, please. So outlined on this slide are the mix of marketing and public relations tools that we will continue to employ to execute our marketing strategies. This will include search engine marketing and digital advertising through Facebook ads and Google, print advertising, social media, public relations, quarterly promotions, brochure distribution, and co-op marketing opportunities with Travel Oregon and Willamette Valley Visitors Association. Next slide, please. So on this and the next 3 slides, I've outlined goals, objectives, and metrics for the coming year. Following is a high-level overview of these key goals. So goal number 1 is to support the tourism industry's economic recovery from COVID through continued engagement with our industry organizations, economic development groups, industry partner support, and consumer messaging about COVID-specific health, safety, and travel conditions, as well as advocacy. Goal number 2 is to optimize economic impact by inspiring overnight leisure drive travel from key markets, as well as to promote conferences, athletic events, and other travel groups when COVID clouds clear, with an overall goal of increasing year-over-year transient lodging tax revenue by 20%. Next slide, please. So goal number 3 is to strengthen our collaborations and partnerships. Key initiatives are providing a Google My Business listing, training, and support program for the local business community, spearheaded by Taste Newberg in partnership with Newberg Downtown Coalition and Chehalem Valley Chamber. So Google is the #1 web search engine and can drive significant traffic growth if listings are optimized. In the last audit that we did for Google listings for tourism-facing businesses, we found that they were somewhere between 60 and 75%, and goal is to get them up to 90% or greater. We will partner with Oregon Agritourism Partnership on creation of a Yamhill County Farm Loop digital guide and rack brochure. We will actively collaborate with other industry groups for regional marketing and promotions, hosted media visits, and destination development. Goal number 4 is to increase quality of life and educate community about the value of tourism. This will be accomplished through community education programs about TLT taxes and their use. Next slide, please. So goal number 5 is to support a more consistent year-round economy by dispersing visitors both seasonally and by interest. This will be accomplished through activation of off-season promotions and points of interest, educating media about the diversity of year-round attractions in Newberg and surrounding area, as well as developing a cycling tourism presence for Newberg. Goal number 6 is to support and empower Newberg's tourism industry partners. We will inform them about training and education opportunities, specifically including Google My Business and race, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We will share relief funding and grant opportunities as well. Next slide, please. So goal number 7 is to execute on data-driven strategic actions. This slide is a roundup of our ongoing web, advertising, social media, PR, photo, video, and print collateral marketing initiatives, and with key metrics to measure our progress to goal. Next slide, please. So on this slide, we've defined our traveler demographics and psychographics to guide our advertising and target marketing strategies. The Allison represents a significant portion of our lodging tax revenue, so a large segment of our target traveler are married couples aged 35 to 55 plus, interested in luxury stays, wine and culinary activities, and shopping. The millennial market is also a focus with interests in vacation rental stays, wine tasting, brew pubs, casual dining, and outdoor recreational experiences. Next slide, please. So how do we measure our success? Outlined on this slide are the metrics we will use to measure our success. Primarily, we will measure year-over-year transient lodging tax growth. However, with COVID challenges continuing, this metric might not be as strong as others, which include results based on earned media coverage, digital and social media advertising campaign analytics, social media engagement metrics, website traffic flows, newsletter open and click-through rates, as well as subscriber growth. Next slide, please. So for the budget, to preface my budget submissions, I will remind you of the discussion I had with City Council when presenting Taste Newberg's 2019-20 budget regarding startup and carryover times and how those should be allocated throughout our 3-year contract. It was decided by council that it would be appropriate to spread the funds across the 3-year budget cycle. So each of our annual budgets, including this one, has shown that allocation of $576,000 divided over the 3-year contract term. So to recap, the TLT budgeted revenues for Taste Newberg, year 1 was $324,000, but we ended up finishing at $198,000 due to COVID. Excuse me. Year 2 budget was $125,000, and we are projecting to actualize at $141,000. Year 3 budget is $187,000. So first year's expenses were budgeted at $561,000, but we severely cut back on that due to the COVID onset and finished at $242,000. Year 2 was budgeted at $441,000 for expenses, but we are projecting to finish at $290,000 for actuals. Year 3 is budgeted at $466,000. So you might question, well, if we were at $290,000 and we were at $242,000, why is it being budgeted at $466,000? So I will address that. So this budget reflects projected TLT revenues of $187,000, as well as prior year's carryover revenue of $279,000. Expenses equal this revenue total of $466,000. As mentioned earlier, we were unable to launch our brand and related programmatic paid marketing in this fiscal year budget cycle, so it is instead reflected in this budget. In tandem with the economic recovery projected for this coming fiscal year, it is imperative that Taste Newberg is empowered to fully deploy the brand launched and marketing campaigns that have been COVID delayed. As outlined in our business plan initiatives, a goal of increasing TLT revenues by 20% is best accomplished with effective and targeted advertising and campaign strategies. So any TLT revenues over the budgeted $187,000 will be held for year 4 carryover funds. We did not tap into the reserves, which would also be available for year 4 should revenues fall short of recovery expectations as outlined in the reserve provisions. We will also monitor quarterly TLT revenue levels and pull back on program expenses, much like we did in this current fiscal year, should we see the recovery moving more slowly than is anticipated. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about specific line items or any clarifications you need on the budget. Next slide, please. So I appreciate your consideration of our request for approval of the submitted business plan and budget, and I'm available to answer any questions you have at this time.
Stephanie.
Yeah, I want to be clear that I love this work and I don't take any issue with the work, but looking at the budget and seeing, I'm just a little skeptical that the predicted budget is a decrease in revenue of 103,000 and an increase in 175,000 in expenses. And when I look at this, it feels like a budget, it feels like a shoot the moon. And so I guess I'm kind of curious, I know you talked a little bit about it, but what the long-term prognosis is for this if we continue to operate like this. It doesn't feel sustainable to me, and I could be wrong about that, but I certainly want to know what would or does make it sustainable.
Good questions, thank you. honestly, it's not sustainable based on the COVID revenues, the COVID TLT revenues we've experienced for this past year and what we may be anticipating for this coming year at the 187,000. So that's why I talked about year one, because year one was budgeted at 324,000, and that was kind of the path we expected to see when we embarked upon this journey. And so, you know, really having, you know, we've severely pulled back on the program expenses and have the ability to do that to a certain extent going forward into this coming year, if that's, you know, how we want to see the sustainability of this organization last longer into years 4 and potentially 5. You know, because we really need to be able to see a bounce back of that TLT revenue beyond just what this budget of 186,000 is, which that's the, you know, what the city, you know, what Doug gave me as the number to work with. We are working towards a goal of increasing that by 20%, if not more so. That's what the industry is predicting for the coming year. But again, you know, watching the, you know, we're in the middle of what, surge 4, I guess, with COVID now. And so, you know, who knows how that's going to, you know, direct our flow for the next 6 months or so. So yeah, it's a tough one. We have to be able to get, you know, back up to at least, I would say, a 225,000 TLT revenue level, if not 250, in order to really, you know, be able to manage this for the long term. And really, you know, the expenses that you see for year 3 are probably the most significant because we've not launched the brand. You know, we launched the website and did organic marketing tactics, but we have not truly launched this brand. And part of that work is to be able to grow that TLT. So, you know, it's kind of a catch-22 because if you pull back all of those program expenses down in the bottom part of that budget, then we're not doing the work to be able to grow the TLT revenue. So it's kind of, you know, which way we go kind of a thing. And so that's a good question to ask. And I'm glad you have allowed me the time to hopefully give you an answer that helps a little bit.
And Leslie, can I add on to that a little bit?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to say that I mean, again, agree with Leslie, a great question and a great thing to point out. This is not the financial state that we want to be sustained in. The goal is to be generating more TLT revenue and therefore forming a more sustainable organization. So this model is really unique because it's still kind of in a startup phase and a COVID phase. So I think Leslie pointed that out really clearly, but I just really want to reiterate that this is not the model that we hope to see in years 4 and 5 and beyond.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or go ahead, Elise.
So I know this is kind of a circular question and no one has a crystal ball. But I also just, you know, as I'm going to my favorite restaurants in town, getting takeout or sitting inside at reduced capacity and just anecdotally listening to restaurant, you know, owners, and I would imagine the Allison, it seems just economic hardships around the hospitality industry is severe and probably going to get worse, I would imagine. I guess this is more a question for the council and Dan, but because it, you know, it all impacts one another. Specifically the Allison or restaurants that I fear are like right at the breaking point of sustainability. What do we feel like we have as tools in our toolbox as a council, as a city institution to really help sustain their business, I guess? Because we can look at the budget numbers of Taste Newberg, but it's all a repercussion of one another. And with variance, and, you know, I do think we need to be planfully thinking about what we're going to do to help people stay in Newberg.
Well, I'll just make, I mean, I'd like to see some ARPA money directed just personally, but that's, you know, that's a later discussion. I know we were talking about that with the budget committee and all, but certainly some ARPA money in some way, or ARP, whatever it's called. All right, Denise.
I guess my problem came in, Leslie, when you said you can't look at the transient lodging tax collection as part of the matrix, but that's where the money is coming from. So that's a little difficult not to look at that. None of those other things really mean someone's going to come here. I've been looking at cruises to Scotland. I'm not going to go on a cruise to Scotland, but I'm bored and I'm thinking of what I could do. So that is one thing I'm a little worried about. The other thing I'm a little worried about is you talk about it, what millennials want, which would be most likely, the first travelers, experiences, and we don't have those. So I would prefer, like Elise talked about, how do we support the businesses and how do we save for experiences? I think that's going to be what helps us bring back if we have something to offer people. We did a study. That's what they told us we needed. And we just keep spending the money on advertising for people to come here instead of saving it and building something or supporting someone building something that they can come to, which is what they told us they wanted. So to me, it's like, let's just, and how can we tell if the money is coming in is from your work or the Allison's work that spends a tremendous amount on advertising too. So, it's all just a little, I love your work, but I wish we had some way of saving to build something. And I wish we had some way of not spending money now because we don't know when this is going to end.
And we certainly have that opportunity. Again, talking about in the program expenses, the fact that I plugged in everything to complete that 3-year cycle. And if council so determines that you want us to pull back on, we haven't started paid, we are just now starting paid advertising. So we have not spent, other than a few Facebook ad posts every month, I don't think we've spent over $60 a month for the last 12 years on advertising. And so, we committed to a $10,000 spend for May and June to put our toe into the water. But that $100,000 line item you see in this budget, which is $100,000, I just said 100,000 twice, didn't I? We can pull that back. We can certainly pull that back and contingency it for carryover. That's an easy enough thing to do. But, like you said, and to address the part about millennials and experiences, interestingly, there have been a number of things that we see that participation currently, whether it's, kayaking or paddleboarding or cycling or, those sorts of things. Those things are available currently. We've seen very strong demand in the tasting rooms, and that's been promising. We were seeing strong demand at the Allison. The biggest issue with the Allison, other than the fact that they closed for 2 weeks due to a workplace outbreak, which hasn't helped matters this month, is the fact that we're seeing some extreme staffing shortages and hiring challenges. And that's a bigger, scarier thing in my mind than I think Elise was kind of talking about that to a certain degree. How do we get the Allison back up to full capacity is one of the biggest things. But they were having good group booking activity, and they were seeing, that level of clientele were coming. And so it's promising, but we need to be able to figure out, how do we maximize their capacity? And, I'm not sure how much advertising they were actually spending either. They do a lot of organic marketing as well and public relations. And there's a lot you can do with that. So.
Bryce.
3 thoughts. First thought, Denise, you for sure got to take a cruise to Scotland. Just please do it for me. Do it for the people. Do it for the culture. Second thought, and I don't know if this is a question for Dan or whoever, but to Denise's point around like building programs that might draw people, are we allowed to use, or maybe this is a James question, are we allowed to use TLT funds to build things like that? I'm a bit unfamiliar with some of the restrictions around TLT and how it's used.
I'll let James officially answer, but I will say yes.
So yeah, you can use the reason I pause is because it kind of depends on what you're building, right? I think that there is some ability to use TLT funds for other things besides just like advertising, for example. But I hesitate to give a yes or no, so I guess I'm giving the classic. It depends.
It depends what you build. Sure.
It does really depend on what you're building.
Okay. Okay. Good to know. And then my last question, Leslie, again, also grateful for your work. You always have the most beautiful presentations. I'm low-key a little bit jealous, quite colorful. I'm looking at slide, at least on ours, it's slide 4. I don't know if it's still there for you, but it's looking at the guiding principles and brand values. And then under the brand values, there's culinary, something like Jory, Rose Merino, Painted Lady, Recipe, Ruddock Wood, Good Company, Bistro, and other acclaimed eateries, which are all phenomenal choices, by the way. Good work. My questions, though, again, around like culinary, thinking even just within the downtown area, where's like Ricky's Tacos or El Burrito or the like ramen Korean fusion place or Gonzalez, that I think are also like phenomenal culinary experiences that might draw in other crowds. And it might just be that, you know, there's only a certain amount of space, but figured I would at least ask.
Yes, absolutely. We do not only promote those that are listed on the slide. And we're actually, my PR team and I we're having a little meeting at the food cart pod in a couple weeks so that they can become better familiar with all those entities. And, you know, because we tend to favor Dos Mundos too much. And so we need to spread it around a little bit more so.
Yeah, I mean, Dos Mundos is phenomenal. And if you're ever looking for some other recommendations, I'm happy to help out.
And don't forget Morisco's Maggie at the trailer at the food carts. Morisco's Maggie, very good. All right. Any other questions? I can't see y'all, so let me know. All right. I just one comment, I guess maybe the flip side, I think a little bit of what Denise said about having things and building things here. And maybe I'm just a real homie, but I will tell you, actually, Leslie, there was a large water polo event going on at the pool this weekend, and I heard that they could not find places to stay. People had to stay in Tigard because of it. So from that, I would say we have a probably one of the best pools in the state. It got to be the top 2 pools in the state. We have one of the best municipal golf courses in the state. We've got a phenomenal university in our midst. And I think really the more we can partner with Parks and Rec, because they happen to be managing a lot of that for things like trails. I mean, the city of Newburgh likely is not going to build a trail, but Parks and Rec will. And that's the kind of thing that I think we just have to really encourage the partnerships, you know, not to mention the food we have here, the wine we have here, you know, but you're right. I mean, we do not have recreational activities beyond that, you know, surfing or skiing or whatever it may be. But I think, again, we have things that people will come for. And so anyway, so that's my 2 cents on that subject. Anything else for Leslie?
I was just going to comment that we had a travel writer come in a couple weeks ago who we hosted for a 2-night stay, and we had him, he's writing about golf. And so we had him play out at Chehalem Glen, and I asked the golf pro if he would play 2 or 3 holes with him, and he did, and did a fabulous job. And I asked him to also describe the surrounding trails. And so I'm looking forward to the media coverage we'll see from that, because that is a thing for people, you know, just being able to know where the walking trails are, you know, in the area. And he was so impressed with Chehalem Glen and just how he was treated there. And so it's nice that we have a good relationship with CPRD, and they're always very accommodating when we ask for them to help us out with things like that.
Awesome. And don't forget, we have ball golf. We also have disc golf. We have 3 disc golf courses within striking distance. So never forget that. So there we go. All right. Anything else for Leslie or Britta? All right. Thank you for all your good works promoting this community of ours. So thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Let's move on.
Mayor.
Oh, sorry. Yes, James.
I've got something too. Oh, go ahead, Doug. But I've got something after you, Doug.
You have a resolution before you to approve the business plan and the budget. So you need to address that with a motion and a second and a vote.
I greatly appreciate that. All right. Was that it, James? Is that what you had too?
It is. I had two things. So maybe let me, Mr. Mayor, if I could just address two. One is, thank you, Doug. Doug already we've got a resolution before the council. The second item is I appreciate Councilor Cofield's question. I think that it is in line with the question that Councilor Yarnell Holloman asked several meetings ago about transit under the general umbrella of transient lodging tax and what it can or cannot be used for. And of course, I could get into kind of the details of the 70-30 split and allocation of uses, but to the extent that, from a legal side, some sort of discussion in a work session or some sort of written product to kind of talk about some of those things so that you don't just get it depends answers from me would be helpful. And that doesn't have to be decided today, but to the extent that that would help for me to prepare something like that for the council, we are available to do that.
Thank you. And actually, what Lisa had said earlier, this notion of if we are going to do the retreat, I think this TLT probably should be a topic for that discussion as well. So that would be great. All right. All right. Now that I have been reminded, there is a resolution before us, and that resolution would be 2021-3731, a resolution approving the fiscal year 2021-22 Visit Newberg, Taste Newberg, but business plan and budget. If we have a motion to that effect, that would be great. Okay. All right, Mike.
I move that we go ahead and adopt resolution number 2021-3731 for the budget of 2021-2022 Taste of Newberg.
Okay. And do we have a second?
Second it.
Okay, Elise with a second. All right. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your left hands. Okay, looks like we're unanimous. So again, Leslie and Britta, thank you. I thanked you before the resolution was approved. I'll thank you again now. So thank you. Have a very good evening. All right, now I think we're on to public hearings. This is not items 9A and 9B. Both are legislative hearings. So let's start with the first one. Ordinance 2021-2876, an ordinance amending the Newberg Comprehensive Plan 2017 Water Master Plan incorporating the addendum Riverfront Master Plan 2021 into the Newberg Comprehensive Plan. And if we don't have to read that again, I'll be happy. So as I said, this is a legislative hearing. So this hearing is now called to order. I mentioned the purpose, declaration of conflict of interest or abstentions, folks. All right, seeing none, let's move on to the staff report. And Mr. Rux.
Thank you, Mayor. Doug Rux, Community Development Director. So as the mayor had indicated, what you have tonight in front of you is an ordinance related to updating our 2017 Water Master Plan. Primarily, the focus of this is to the Riverfront Master Plan, which council approved back in September of 2019. To try to make it easier for you, because there were a lot of pages to this particular ordinance, on your front page of your RCA, we tried to highlight the specific pages within the plan that are going to need to be updated. There was an ad hoc citizens advisory committee that provided guidance to staff and the consultant, in this case, Murray Smith. And Heidi Springer is with us this evening, and she's going to walk through a PowerPoint, and then I will come back to you on the last couple of slides. Thank you.
Good evening, councilors. Thank you for having me. Heidi Springer with Murray Smith. I had an opportunity to present to most of you at a work session a few weeks ago. So this is just a brief overview of that presentation to make sure everyone has the information. So I will talk about the goals of the Water Master Plan update, what sort of motivated it, And then the analysis process we went through, looking at your water demand, our analysis results, and what we recommend as additional capital improvement projects as part of the amendment to your 2017 Water Master Plan. Next slide, please. So our project goals, as Doug said, the primary driver for this project was to plan for water service for the Riverfront Master Plan area that Master Plan approved in 2019. As we began the project, the middle housing legislation, so the rulemaking for that came through, and so Doug and the engineering team asked us to also look at what the impact to the water system might be from planning for middle housing in 2 specific areas south of downtown. We also took this opportunity to incorporate a seismic resilience assessment that the city had done into the capital improvement program for the water system. Those seismic resilience assessments are now required as part of Oregon Water Master Plans as of January of 2018. All of this comes together to lead us into an update of your system development charges. We started that process and learned from city staff that there was additional discussion that the Urban Renewal Committee and Council wanted to have on that. So that work has been, will continue in fall of 2021. Next slide, please. So our analysis process to update this water master plan, we were looking at 3 key areas. One of them was water demand. So we know that adding a new development area to your city is going to increase water demand, the riverfront area. But we also wanted to ask, has there been any significant change in demand since 2017? Did we need to consider any additional analysis there? Then also looking at the criteria that we use to assess the water system in the 2017 plan and making sure that none of that criteria has changed or that any of the regulations have changed. And taking those 2 things together in a hydraulic model of your water system to assess the capacity, primarily of your piping system. We did look at things like storage and supply, but neither one of those were significant issues. Next slide, please. So the Riverfront Master Plan area, this is from the 2019 Master Plan. It shows the proposed zoning for the area. So that's what we based our water demand projections on, looking at similar zoning types in other places in the city and assuming that we would see some similar types of development and water use patterns. And there are limited existing water mains here, mostly north of the bypass. Next slide, please. So what we found is that there was only a minor change in water demand since 2017, which is something that we have seen with other cities and utilities in the region, that though population is growing, water demand has been fairly level. Hopefully a result of excellent conservation by citizens. Looking at a 20-year future estimate, which is the planning horizon for water master plans, we took the 20-year projections for the rest of the city from the 2017 plan and then added on what we were projecting for demand in the riverfront area. So that led us to an average day demand of about 4 million gallons per day for the whole city. Next slide, please. Then we did a fire flow analysis using the hydraulic model, and that particular exercise looks at kind of a worst case scenario. Were there to be a fire anywhere in the city on a maximum day demand in the summer, what would be the available water to fight that fire at any particular point in the system? And compare that to criteria guided by the Oregon Fire Code for what estimated fire flow is needed for different types of housing and development. And what we found, the large red dots represent the largest fire flow deficiencies. So those are less than 75% of the recommended fire flow is available. And we see those mostly in the riverfront area at existing dead end mains, which I would expect. There's not, again, a lot of water mains or infrastructure in the riverfront area right now. So future pipe looping through that area as roadways are developed and development occurs will improve that. And that's kind of the yellow shaded area at the bottom of the map. And then the purple shaded area above that is the area we looked at for middle housing impacts and essentially higher fire flows for greater density of housing. The small diameter piping grid that is in this area serves the single family housing that's there just fine, but is not capable of providing a higher capacity fire flow for larger properties. Next slide, please. So the red pipes you see on this map are the pipes that we recommend to serve future development in the riverfront area. This is focusing on a backbone system, so 8-inch and 12-inch diameter pipes along the major planned roadways for this area, or right-of-ways in general. It's about 2 miles of piping at an estimated cost of about $4.5 million. Next slide, please. Middle housing improvements. So again, the purple area that we looked at for higher density housing, higher fire flow. We are recommending about 2.9 miles of replacing existing 4 and 6-inch diameter pipes with 8 and 12-inch diameter pipes at a total cost of $6.6 million. Next slide, please. Seismic improvements. So these are projects that were identified through the city's seismic resilience project. I believe council has probably seen a presentation on more details of that. They primarily focus on storage improvements and some supply improvements, things that will help the water system better respond and recover after a seismic event. Next slide, please. Now I will turn it over to Doug to describe how these meet your planning goals.
Thank you, Heidi. So as always necessary, I need to make sure that I enter the entire staff report, the exhibits and the attachments into the record. So in your packet, we've addressed the necessary findings. So we've reviewed the statewide planning goals and concluded that we are in conformance with those. We went through the Newberg Comprehensive Plan and identified that we are in conformance with those. We also have ORS 197-712 and OAR 660, Division 11 on public facilities. We've included that information and findings and concluded that we are in conformance with those requirements. And then the final one is that we had to look at our municipal code because this is a type 4 legislative procedure and concluded that we can comply with those provisions as well. Next slide. So this is the Planning Commission recommendation. Before I do that, again, as a reminder, we had an ad hoc citizens advisory committee that provided guidance to staff and consultants on this one, and they recommended approval of the update to the Water Master Plan. The Planning Commission also did their review. They passed an ordinance, a resolution 365, recommending that we incorporate the addendum for the Riverfront Master Plan into the 2017 Water Master Plan. Next slide. And so our recommendation is to adopt ordinance number 2021-2876. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sue, do we have any public comment for this?
Mr. Mayor, we do not have any public comment for this ordinance.
Okay, then I will close public testimony. We have the recommendation from staff. Deliberation, folks. And or questions. All right. All right, this is legislative. If we're going to, again, we will want to do the passage of the ordinance, waive the second reading, read by title only. So, giving you the cues. So anybody who would like to make a motion.
I'll make the motion to
waive.
waive the second reading.
We have a second to waive the second reading.
Second.
Okay, Bryce, thank you. We've got a motion and a second to waive the second reading. All in favor, raise your left hands. Okay, that passes then. All right, and how's about now for the ordinance itself? How's about a resolution?
I can do that too, Mayor.
Thank you, Denise.
You're welcome. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 2021-2876 and read by title only.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I got Denise's second right here.
There you go, Bryce. We got it. All right. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right. I think we want a roll call vote, please, Sue, as it's legislative.
However, this is the city attorney's cue to read by title.
I'll read it off. Read by title only. So it's submitted.
Dang it.
I wasn't quick enough with my cue, Mayor. Apologies, but
No, it was me. That was me.
but submitted to the council for approval ordinance number 2021-2876, an ordinance amending the Newberg Comprehensive Plan 2017 Water Master Plan, incorporating the addendum Riverfront Master Plan 2021 into the Newberg Comprehensive Plan.
All right. All right. All right. Now I can say, all in favor, signify by raising your left. No, I cannot. Oh,
You got it right the first time. It's a roll call vote. It's an ordinance.
all
You got to
right.
do a roll call vote.
Let's do it.
Councilor McBride,
Yes.
Councilor Cofield,
Sorry, yes.
Councilor Granell Holloman,
Yes.
Mayor Rogers,
Yes.
Councilor Bacon,
Yes.
Councilor Finley,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, 6-0, absent.
All right. Thank you very much. Just one comment on that. I know I didn't mention it this time, and Heidi heard it the last time. Reuse water to the riverfront. I hope that will come up in some other capital improvement project at some point. So thank you. All right. I think now we're on to the second legislative hearing of the evening. This one being ordinance 2021-2877, an ordinance amending the Newberg Comprehensive Plan, 2018 Wastewater Master Plan, incorporating the addendum Riverfront Master Plan 2021 into the Newberg Comprehensive Plan.
So thank you, Mayor. Doug Rux again, Community Development Director. So as the mayor had mentioned, this is an addendum to our wastewater master plan from 2018. Again, we had an ad hoc Citizens Advisory Committee who provided guidance to staff and the consultants on this project. As we did in the water, on the wastewater in your RCA, we listed out on the first couple of pages all of the changes that were occurring. Again, this was a very voluminous report, and so thank you for those who read every page. I know you did. I had to read it multiple times. So we've been through this process for a while. The main focus of this, again, was the riverfront area, but there were some ancillary pieces. Emily Flock from Keller Associates is here with us this evening. She's going to provide the presentation, and I will early this time say, enter the entire staff report and all the exhibits and attachments into the record. So thank you, Emily.
Hi, thank you, Emily. I work with Keller Associates, and we did the wastewater master plan update. And similar to the water master plan update you just heard about, we were able to present to, I believe, most of the council at a work session a few weeks ago. So again, this is a quick summary and overview of that presentation on the wastewater update. So next slide, please. Quick agenda, just some background and project goals of the update, which areas specifically were updated in this project, the overall evaluation that came out of those updates, alternatives and recommended alternatives for deficiencies identified, recommended improvements, and finally the updated capital improvement plan. Next slide. So project overview, goals and objectives. Again, the main driver for this was the accepted Riverfront Master Plan. And so incorporating this additional data into the wastewater master plan. We were looking to, as Doug mentioned, the Crestview area, which I will show you on the next slide, was added. We recommended updated capital improvement plan, and we also looked at the infrastructure-based time extension request, which is related to the middle housing bill, similar to what you saw in the water master plan. Couple additional items was we reviewed the evaluation threshold criteria with the Citizen Advisory Committee. The River Run subdivision was incorporated in the Riverfront update as it is in that area. And the Springbrook Basin, excuse me, as I alluded to, is the Crestview area. And again, finally, we updated the evaluation, alternatives, and improvement plan. Next slide. So system updates, we started from the 2018 Wastewater Master Plan build out scenario. And then the two areas we focus on are the Riverfront area down in the south of town, and then up in the northeast is the Crestview Drive, East Crestview Drive, Crestview Crossing, which are in the Springbrook wastewater basin. So those were updated with planning information that the city has since the 2018 master plan. Next slide. Planning criteria, again, the wastewater planning criteria is a 5-year, 24-hour storm peak flows. And for Newberg, this is a 2.9 inches of rain in 24-hour storm. So it's a pretty large storm. The evaluation threshold, as I mentioned, we discussed with the Citizen Advisory Committee, looking at 85% depth, full pipe, top of pipe as full, 1 foot above the top of pipe and 2 foot below the rim elevation. We moved forward with the 2 foot below rim elevation per the CAC's recommendation, and this matches the evaluation threshold from the 2018 master plan. The design criteria was 85% full depth at peak flows, so future improvements are sized to this design criteria, and pump stations are evaluated at their firm capacity, which means the largest pump is offline, and this is in alignment with the Oregon DEQ standards. Next slide. Here's a quick overview of the 3 major basins in the wastewater system. The yellow one we consider the River Street Basin, the blue is Hess Creek, the red is Springbrook Road Basin, and that purple hatching is the Fernwood Pump Station sub-basin, which is inside of the Springbrook Road, so it pumps from down on Fernwood Road up to the Springbrook Road intersection. Next slide. This was the updated system evaluation, and everything aside from the yellow matches up with the same as the 2018 master plan evaluation. So the yellow pieces, the first one was down in the Riverfront district. We wanted to make sure that that was backwater effects caused by the trunk line, and that the recommended infrastructure in the master plan was appropriately sized for the loads. And then the L is the Fernwood Pump Station, which is part of that Springbrook area we talked about earlier. Next slide. So looking at the Springbrook Basin, this Crestview, East Crestview Drive and Crestview Crossing, the alternatives were to direct East Crestview Drive either to the east, which would flow south and go through the Fernwood Pump Station, or to the west, which would go through the existing subdivision off of Aquarius Boulevard and connect to the Springbrook Road trunk line. We looked at a 20-year life cycle evaluation for that difference in pumping costs from the elevated flows if you went to the east, as well as infrastructure improvements needed to redirect that line to the west. With a 20-year life cycle, we recommend alternative 1, which is directing East Crestview Drive to the east and flowing south to the Fernwood Pump Station. And the improvements include the East Crestview Drive connecting to Crestview Crossing, the Fernwood Pump Station upgrades that are needed, upsizing some existing line on the Springbrook Road trunk line, as well as a new parallel pipeline south of the Fernwood and Springbrook Road intersection. And then the new infrastructure on East Crestview Drive and in Crestview Crossing were added to the capital improvement plan. Next slide. For the Riverfront area, the main capacity issue is the South River Street and East 11th Street trunk line, and that's the line there in purple. There's potential that I&I reduction could reduce the improvement size needed for this improvement. The 2018 Wastewater Master Plan does a pretty extensive evaluation of I&I in the city, as well as recommending reduction plan and priorities that the city is working on annually. We recommend upsizing the existing line and again, evaluating the possible I&I reductions in the pre-design phase of this project. And again, the additional infrastructure from the Riverfront Master Plan was included in the capital improvement plan. Next slide. This is the updated capital improvement plan, and this includes all of the recommendations from the 2018 wastewater master plan with the updated recommendations from the Riverfront area as well as the Crestview area. And all dollars here have been updated to 2021 dollars. Next slide. Pass this back to Doug.
Thank you, Emily. So again, we did findings based upon the work that Keller had prepared. So we concluded that we were in conformance with statewide planning goals in this proposal. We were in conformance with Newberg Comprehensive Plan. Again, with ORS 197-712 and OAR 660, Division 11 for public facilities. And then finally, as this is a type 4 procedures, that we can conform with those hearing procedures process. Next slide. So as I mentioned in the water, we had the ad hoc committee who recommended approval of this proposal to the city council, and the planning commission adopted resolution 366 that the addendum for the Riverfront Master Plan be incorporated into the 2018 wastewater master plan. Next slide. And staff's recommendation is to adopt ordinance 2021-2877. Thank you, Mayor.
All righty. Well, thank you, Doug. Emily, thank you very much. All right. Declaration of conflict of interest or abstentions. Anyone, councilors? All right. Not seeing any. What about public testimony, Sue?
Mr. Mayor, we do not have any public testimony for this item.
Thank you. I will close public testimony then. We have the recommendation from staff. Council deliberation. All right. Hearing none. We can go through. We did it just earlier. We can do it again. Do we have a motion regarding a second?
I'll try,
reading?
Mayor.
All right.
I think I can do it again.
I think you got it. I think you got it.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we waive the second reading.
Okay. We've got a second.
Second.
All right. Elise with a second. All right. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your left hand. Okay. Thank you. That passes unanimously, Sue. All right. Next. How's about a motion for the item itself?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt ordinance number 2021-2877, read by title only.
We got this. All right. We have a second.
Second.
All right, Mike, thank you for the second. All right. Now here we go.
Here we go.
This is James's cue. Here it is.
Submitted to the council for approval is ordinance number 2021-2877, an ordinance amending the Newberg Comprehensive Plan 10, 2018 Wastewater Master Plan, incorporating the addendum addendum Riverfront Master Plan 2021 into the Newberg Comprehensive Plan.
All right, we got this. All right, Sue, how's about a roll call vote, please?
Councillor McBride.
Yes.
Councillor Cofield.
Yes.
Councillor Yarnell Holloman.
Yes.
Mayor Rogers.
Yes.
Councillor Bacon.
Yes.
Councillor Findlay.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, the item passes 6-0, 1 absent.
All right, thank you very much, Emily and Doug. Thank you very kindly. All right, let's see. I think we're on to council business. Item 11A, council committee reports. If you all have stuff to report. All right. The only thing, and this sort of brings up some of what we were talking about before, but a lot of work going on to try to get secure funding for the bypass for phase 2 particularly. So fingers crossed that some of that will come through. There's even some talk of sort of a combined application with Parks and Rec for some trails that were mentioned earlier. So we shall see how that pans out. So other than that, that's about what I got at the moment.
Mr.
Anybody
Mayor,
else?
Mr.
Yes, sir,
Mayor,
Doug.
may I ask a question of the council?
Fire away.
Thank you. So as we go through redevelopment opportunities for the mill site, which is under demolition at this point in time, I think I would like to ask the council to keep under consideration when we talk about the bypass is the realignment of Winooski Road so that it gets moved as the intersection with 219 and Wilsonville. I think that's going to be a key transportation piece in order to make that redevelopment work. My fear is that as redevelopment occurs and traffic volumes start to pick back up, is we don't get in a position that ODOT says, oh, now you need to build a new traffic signal at the existing Winooski, because it would be a throwaway. And so as you're, with the Parkway Committee and having these discussions, I don't know what the number would be, but we could roughly, it was around 7 million to realign Wilsonville Road. It might be somewhere around that. But I think that will be an important thing for the council to keep in consideration as we try to redevelop and get 1.5 million square feet of new industrial space.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And Stephanie, we'll have to remember to see, because that intersection at 219 is very much the focus of some of the money now. But I don't know whether the realignment of Winooski is in that or not. So we will ask at the next Parkway Committee meeting. But thank you, Doug. Okay. Yeah, very good. We need to keep an eye on that. That whole transportation into that area is hugely important. So, okay. All right. Anything else, folks? Committee reports? Okay. All right. I have a script that I'm going to read. I will now read the announcement required to hold an executive session. After the announcement, this Zoom meeting will terminate and the council will enter into a separate Zoom meeting not open to the public. Here in a few minutes, the city council will meet in executive session for the purpose of deliberation with persons designated by the governing body to conduct a performance evaluation of a public official. The executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192-662I, which is evaluation of a public official. Representatives of the news media and designated staff and other persons will be allowed to attend this executive session. No decision will be made in the executive session. At the end of the executive session, the council meeting will adjourn and we will not return to open session. We will now terminate this public Zoom meeting and begin the executive session. All right, folks, so sign back in here in a couple of minutes and we will be back to executive session and see you in a minute.